YouTube going live.
And we are live. Wonderful. I'm gonna go live on every other any other platform. So with Facebook, then we do Instagram from here as well.
Yes. Let me start this.
So we're going live on Facebook. Sorry for the YouTubers following us, but we're still going live. We're live on Facebook. Perfect.
Should I put it here or should I put it there?
Maybe here? Yes. And then once you go live, I go live here. Yeah, we are live everywhere.
Right.
So Laura, how was the week?
Super busy week for everyone who's following us. We had 7 days ago, we were in the middle of a huge 14-hour event. So it's been a busy week, but I think it's been good, right? It's been very positive.
Very good.
And we're very excited to be back here since you haven't seen us last week. So we're very happy to be back and give you a lot of updates.
And I see Fatima on one of the lives already saying my favs, and people saying hi. So yeah, we have many loyal supporters and actually active participants in our events.
Very active.
So while we wait for people to connect on the different lives, I think today we're gonna cover a general update on the activities of our movement, and obviously, deep dive on certain topics that are particularly important to us. One topic that we're gonna cover for sure is what Laura already mentioned, the Freedom Marathon. For those that missed it, we're gonna explain it again quickly and explain also the next steps. We're a bit late on some of them, we still have to email some of our wonderful speakers that are following us, but we're gonna do it very soon. Then we're going to discuss about the Wave of Freedom campaign. There is the campaign link to that event. And then we're going to jump in a couple of new things.
Very exciting things. We're going to talk about a very cool action, very long action that we're planning for our global climate emergency, because we don't have a lot of time left. We only have 100 days until the end of the year, so we must do something. And then we're going to update you on our campaign program, a survey that is going to come to your inbox very soon. And I think that's it for today. Comment on any questions that you might have. So do drop us questions, and we'll try to answer everything. I don't know if people on Instagram can hear us. You let us know if you can hear us, because we have some issues with the laptop and everything.
Yeah, I'm moving here because there was very noisy. So let's jump straight into it. So Laura, I'm gonna interview you for the first start. So I read about this Freedom Marathon.
Right.
It was all over your social media, our social media. I received some emails about, but I couldn't be there.
Wow.
So what's this Freedom Marathon? There's a cool name, but what's this Freedom Marathon?
Well, you missed out on an amazing event. We had on Tuesday last week was International Day of Democracy, and we thought that this year we had to do something to celebrate it, because democracy this year has faced a lot of threats all around the world, from Hong Kong to Belarus to Colombia and South Africa. So we wanted to make sure that in this super long 14-hour event, we got as many people involved, activists, politicians, ministers, ambassadors from all over the world, to learn about best practices on how to safeguard democracies and what else can we do to ensure that democracy is protected around the world.
Oh, it sounds like kind of a big project.
It was.
And who spoke there? Who were the people featuring this event?
So we first, just because you mentioned Fatima before, we started the event in an amazing way, I think. I think it was a fantastic session with two activists, one from the UK, Fatima, and another one from Palestine, Majed. And there, I think, we went a bit on a journey, right? On this 14 hours, we went through those countries or groups of society that are still not fully part of democracies, and kind of like we ended with South Africa almost as an example for the rest of the world of how different group of society that before couldn't live together are now building strong democracies. So I think we went on a bit of a journey, right?
Yeah, we did that. And tell me, so I thought that our campaign was only about Hong Kong, and now you told me about Palestine, Belarus, South Africa. How come?
I think like the whole idea was to really show that democracy is a global topic, that we can learn a lot from other countries on best practices, but also, as we said at the beginning, we want to create this wave of freedom that, yes, starts with Hong Kong as a very pressuring issue, also with like the time that we're living at the moment, but it doesn't stop there. You know, the democracy is something that we need to ensure that is protected and guarded around the world.
I completely agree. That's why I work on it with you. And I mean, if I can say a couple of words on the next steps, because obviously it was a very cool event, very tiring, and also like we learned a lot, and we intend to do it every year, starting from obviously this year, but it will be upgraded, will become cooler. This one was organized in 3 weeks. The idea is that the next Freedom Marathon will be real major events. Hopefully, that in a few years will become a landmark moment for democracy and freedom all over the world. But however, for this event in particular, the idea is that now, obviously, we're gonna see with our amazing speakers how we can cooperate. We have different ideas for different speakers from supporting our campaign, exploring future campaigns together, and then with the people that participate, our members obviously advance the next topic. That is the Wave of Freedom campaign.
Yeah.
Where let's say this event was marking the passage from what we call the advocacy campaign the advocacy phase of the campaign to the campaign phase of the campaign.
Yeah.
What does it mean, Laura?
Actually, before we jump into it, because after the event, a lot of people ask me like, what was the biggest lesson learned? What do you think for you was the biggest lesson learned from those 14 hours?
I mean, there are many lessons learned from an operational and professional point of view, which are very fun. But for me, one of the biggest takeaways is also what I shared in the last session of the event, which sadly we have probably lost the recording of, is the idea that democracy is not something you conquer and is static, and is the same now that was 50 years ago. And I mean, honestly, I thought that democracy was that before the event. It was like, okay, once you achieve democracy, once you are in an advanced democracy, you're fine. Like, obviously you have things to fix, but more or less you are there. Well, it was obvious from the very first session that was with Fatima and Majed, but also many other sessions from South Africa, Hong Kong, that democracy is a constant struggle. Democracy is a constant struggle, that the standard of democracy that we have in certain places are not absolute standards. We need to continuously advance. And the more our society advances, the more society changes, the more we have to fight to improve our democracy. And obviously the whole discussion of social media, digital surveillance, different groups that are coming together was not the same problem now. It's not the same problem now that was 50 years ago. And so we need to upgrade our standards of democracy. We need to fight for it. It's a never-ending conversation.
Yeah.
What about you?
No, I totally agree. I think that personally, I think my favorite thing throughout the whole event was the possibility to hearing from people that have experienced a lack of democracy throughout their lives. So from Majed in Palestine to activists that we had from Syria. I think that sometimes coming from a country that is democratic, you kind of forget, you take it for granted. We all have these rights. We all have, we enjoy this. But I think that facing a person that has not experienced democracy never in their entire life. I think that was really eye-opening in what we're trying to do now with Hong Kong in this, at this specific moment, but with perhaps like other countries in the future. So I think, but yeah, I think it was an amazing event. And now, exactly, we did the event, 14 hours. Again, as you said, focused, linked to our Wave of Freedom campaign. What comes next?
What comes next? I will tell you in a minute. I just want to say that many people say they appreciate our work in Hong Kong, also on other topics here on my Instagram. So thank you so much for all those ones that are following us. We do it for Hong Kong, we do it for Belarus, we do it actually for people in the UK, in Italy, in Brazil, in the US, wherever. It doesn't matter, as we explain, democracy, freedom, it has to be fought even in the most advanced democracies in the world. So we are here to stay.
Yeah.
Concerning our campaign, just to quickly summarize, the Wave of Freedom campaign was started now 2.5 months ago on the 1st of July 2020, when a new national security law was imposed in Hong Kong by the Chinese government and obviously the local authorities, and which basically eroded all the fundamental freedoms that Hong Kong used to enjoy as an autonomous region of China. So like the freedom of expression, the freedom to protest, the freedom to say simply things against the government or that entail a certain political positions. Now they are gone. They are basically gone. And so the day of the promulgation of that law, we decided to step up with the support of Joshua Wong, a very famous activist of the pro-democracy front in Hong Kong, and starting this campaign that asked that the biggest democracies in the world, the famous, what we call the D10, the 10 biggest democracies in the world, would come together, ally, and try to push back against China, try to sanction China, try to ensure that China could not continue the clampdown in Hong Kong. Throughout the 2 months, we had wonderful successes because we started, especially these protests all over the world called Fridays for Freedom. This is every week, hundreds of thousands of people online joining the protest in front of Chinese embassies or Chinese consulates to state that we stand for Hong Kong, we stand with Hong Kong all over the world. And more, we had different struggles being covered as well. So from Hong Kong, we started having Tibetan joining in. We started having people defending Inner Mongolia. We started to have Taiwanese being part of the protest. And now, more recently, Belarus, and so on. So we're really starting to see the seed of that wave of freedom that we first imagined in the name of the campaign, and basically show that activists from all over the world, politicians, academics, writers, journalists, can come together, can do something to push back against the authoritarian regimes growth that we have seen in the last decade.
Yeah.
Did I forget anything?
No, I think you said everything. We mentioned this during the Freedom Marathon about how it was 4 of you starting this in Brussels 3 months ago, and now we have people joining from literally every corner of the world. The last edition was Osaka in Japan this Friday, which is amazing. It's amazing to see people that are using their freedom to stand for fights around the world. And as Andrea mentioned before, we're now moving into a second phase of the campaign. We still want to continue to raise awareness through our protests. We still want to, shed a light on those issues that, Andrea mentioned, from Hong Kong to the Uyghurs to Taiwan, and so on and so forth. But we also want to start a more of a advocacy campaign with politicians from all over the world and creating this coalition of the biggest democracy to actually do something, impose sanctions on those countries like China that are cracking down on freedoms and liberties on Hong Kong and other parts of the world. So I think that this, we're a small team, but I think that the idea is, with the help of each and every one of the people that are working with us, we can do this. We can ensure that democracies are protected everywhere. And so I think it's an exciting time, right? Moving from a protest only kind of phase of the campaign to a more active role that individuals around the world can take to support Hong Kongers, but also other groups of societies.
Exactly. So there will be a big focus on actually making sure the government, so like parliamentarians, senators, government officials, back our requests. So a lot of lobbying, a lot of work with politicians, with real power. And for that, our current organizers are already starting, and obviously anyone can help in their country to push this forward. And actually last Friday, something that we didn't mention, we had a parliamentarian joining in Italy with me in Milan, Miss Lia Quartapelle. There is a deputy is Italian, the Italian translation, an MP in the Italian Chamber of Deputies, and also a member of the Foreign Committee of the Parliament. So obviously one of the perfect example of a parliamentarian that have a voice and wants to support the cause. And so as with Mrs. Quartapelle, we're going to continue expanding the coalition of politicians that can push forward our demand in the UK, in Italy, in France, in the US, in Australia, wherever is possible. And so, our call to action for this particular campaign is: if you like freedom, if you believe that people like us, if coming together all over the world, can actually push back against authoritarian regimes, against the Xi, the Putin of this world, please join us. Help us bringing forward the campaign in your country, in your city, in your town, even in your living room if you can't get out because of COVID. But the fact of having this group of people from all over the world coming together will give hope not only to those that are now struggling for freedom in their countries, but actually to all of us. Because remember, we need to fight for democracy. Whatever is happening in certain countries like Hong Kong right now might happen in many other democracies if we don't stand up and fight back.
Yeah.
So this is a very short but important call to action.
Yes. We've shared our link on Facebook, but if you're following us on Instagram, you can just click on the link in bio and find all the information that you need to actually, take a stance and join us in protecting democracy in Hong Kong. But as Andrea said, it could happen everywhere.
Absolutely. So moving to the next topic, Laura, you are a campaign manager now. So I think that you can maybe update quickly on our work on climate. There is another of the big challenges that we are facing as a movement, and explain what's next.
Of course. So just a very quick recap. When Andrea and Colomb launched now on the 1st of January of this year, it was a very, very awful time for climate. Not much has changed, but when they launched, it was a time where we had the huge Australian fires, and so there was a huge need to focus on climate change, and specifically the idea that it cannot be solved at the local level, at the national level. No countries will be able to solve the climate crisis by itself. So we need a global response. And the idea was to push the UN Security Council to declare a global climate emergency, which will mean that each member state will have to abide by new rules to fight and to stop the climate crisis. Because I think what we've seen so far is that we talk a lot about the consequences of climate change, but we're not thinking about what can we do everywhere around the world to actually stop this and to ensure that we do have a future to talk about democracies and human rights and so on and so forth. So the campaign was launched now almost 10 months ago. In those 10 months, we've reached thousands of people that have supported us with our petition and dozens of politicians that have backed our demand. We focused on specific countries throughout the campaign, countries that sit at the UN Security Council and that are more friendly towards the topic. And more recently, we focused on Germany, which, we got the support of many politicians, which means that, there is a desire of wanting to do something more at the global level. But now, as I said, we have only 100 days left before another year goes basically wasted towards this fight against climate change. So we've decided to put all our efforts and all our campaigners' efforts to ensure that the last month of this year, December, in which South Africa will be the president of the UN Security Council, we want to make this month count as much as possible. We want to take actions at the individual level and as a group to ensure that, we don't waste another year, because, we always say that we have X number of years left, but we forget that if there is another year wasted in this fight against climate change, it's 2 years less. So we're very much running out of time.
And actually, we saw today that in Manhattan, in the center of New York, they put this wonderful digital clock, kind of an installation that says that we only have 7 years and something left to turn around the climate situation. If these 7 years are wasted, basically humankind will not have the tools and the time anymore to ensure that the climate crisis will not impact substantially our lives. So we really don't have a lot of time, it's sad to say, but the positive thing to say is that actually we can turn it around.
Yeah.
If governments do not listen to us, if governments, those in powers are blinded by the situation, we as people from all over the world can come together and show that by individual actions, by pressuring politicians, by coming together, we can win the fight against climate change. And that's why Laura explained very well, but just to say it in 3 words, in December, we're going to launch this climate month. Obviously, it's going to be very cool, and we're going to start recruiting and giving more information about it. But get ready, because we can, change the tide, and we can pressure governments such as the South African one, that will be chairing the most important body of the United Nations to really declare global climate emergency. That we believe is the only thing that can save this planet.
Yeah, and I think exactly the whole point here is throughout this month we will be doing individual action, but the point is not just you doing the individual action, it's all of us around the world doing this together to show that a global response is possible, and the global response can start from citizens around the world. If governments around the world don't want to act, we can show them that there is a way for us to provide a global response. And so we're very excited. We spent the last few days putting together all the ideas, talking with our campaigners about how can we make this as impactful as possible. So I think that as we had a call to action for the Wave of Freedom, this is my call to action for you. Climate, in a very negative way, we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, but we can still turn this around. So if you do care about your future, and if you do care about all the other topics that we talk about, know that climate is the most important one, because if we don't have a future, everything else kind of falls apart, right? So join us. You can become a campaigner and getting involved straight away on the creation of this huge climate action that we're going to prepare, and help us save the planet.
Because we try.
Yes.
Very cool. Just before jumping to the next topic, there's an interesting question from Omar, our dear friend, asking whether we can pressure governments, politicians to put these kind of topics more in a prominent way into the education system. So from the global climate emergency, but also freedom, the importance of freedom and democracy. Look, Omar, I think that absolutely yes. And I think there is something more of a longer term work of pressuring Ministry of Education all over the world to actually update the curriculum to the main topics that we face as a human race. Obviously, climate is a very prominent one. There have been already pushes in that sense. But you're right. The importance of individual freedoms of democracy is very rare, at least from my experience, that they are actually well explained in schools, especially transnational democracy, United Nations, forget about it. but even the sheer importance of going in both. These are very, very important topics.
Yeah.
And they are not covered very often.
Yeah,
Right,
100%. I think, Omar, I know how much education is a focal point for you, and we 100% agree. I think that education in a lot of topics is the most important thing to ensure that there is no deny about the existence of global threats like climate change, but also lack of freedom in a lot of countries. So it's definitely an important topic. It requires the change of curriculum in basically all the countries that I can think of, because as Andrea said, I'm not sure anyone tackles these issues in an appropriate manner. But 100%, education is one of the most important things that we have, and one of the most important rights that we can keep on.
Yeah, and we have another question on climate from Yuri or Marco, I'm not sure. He's asking, what if Trump wins again? So we're talking about the US presidential elections. It seems that he's not really keen to acknowledge the present and future impacts of climate change. Obviously, this is one of the biggest issues of our time. The leading politicians, and obviously from one of the leading superpower of this planet, do not want to acknowledge the trouble the climate change will provoke to the planet, to the society. And normally it is because of the economic repercussion that they believe this might have if they were to take certain drastic actions to counter climate change. And this is a huge problem. And if Mr. Trump wins the US presidential election on the 3rd of November, this will be a huge blow to the fight for climate. We know that. But again, we know already the governments have huge flaws. And not only Trump, even like extremely progressive climate-friendly governments still are not doing enough at all. I think about my country, Italy, we are not doing enough at all. And in theory, the government is very climate-friendly. But even Germany is extremely climate-friendly, is cutting on a lot of emission, then is still like digging huge pipelines to transport natural gas from Russia to Europe. So, I mean, the truth is that no government yet has the enough public pressure to actually act on climate. So here it comes to us. It comes to normal people. It comes to citizens. It comes to anyone that right now, thanks to social media and their individual freedom, can actually take action to fight back. And it doesn't only mean protest, as we've seen already for many years, Fridays for Future and so on. But actually, it means trying to push society to change its habits. Try to ensure that the people around you start following your example, your leadership, both in terms of cutting your own emissions, as well as holding your governments accountable and pushing to do more. So I think it's a bit our philosophy. Sadly, Trump is definitely a negative factor in this fight, but I don't think that if Biden was the new US president, we would have solved the problem. Like maybe would be a bit some easier fight. Some would have. Sorry, I can't speak anymore. I'm retired. We would have an easier fight, but it wouldn't be an easy fight at all.
Right, 100%. No, I couldn't say more. Like I think that Trump, big problem, but not the only one. As Andrea said, I don't think that there is any country that is dealing with the issue of climate change properly. But aside from that, I think that even if there was a country that could be an example, it's not enough. Countries cannot solve this issue and a lot of other global issues by themselves, just because of the nature of the issue. Climate change, like the pandemic, does not stop at borders. So it's a waste of time for governments to only think about themselves. I think exactly. We've seen it with the pandemic. We are seeing it with climate change. No nation is going to do this by themselves.
Absolutely. We have also another question from Omar. I don't know if Laura, you want to take it or I can go for it. It's more about von der Leyen and Europe.
You can take it.
Okay. So I'm happy to always speak. Don't worry. In terms of von der Leyen, the big problem for me of many of the statements that you had in the State of the European Union, exactly as in every major speech of politicians, there is a huge difference between what is said and what is actually implemented, especially in Europe, when the European Commission has limited competencies on many topics. So even if the European Commission wants to reform the Dublin Agreement, so not talking about climate, but migration management, they need the agreement of most countries in Europe. And so I love the fact that at least on certain topics, the European Commission tries to push forward, like climate, but I'm always very skeptical on the implementation, because we have seen, for example, migration, where it's an issue now, the way Europe deals with refugees and is completely blinded by the fact that people are dying in the Mediterranean, for example. But it's not news. It's like now 6 years that it's going on, at least, in a massive way. And still, we heard many statements from previous commissioners, from these commissioners, and then we'll change it. Nothing. Actually, the policy became way more restrictive, even from countries like Italy that are supposed to have, a center-left, progressive governments, but then at the end, they had the same legislation that were in place where the right-wing government was there. So, I mean, to answer your question, Omar, good is always good when, people speak in the right direction. They try to speak in the right direction, try to give the right direction. But I'm quite skeptical that substantial thing will happen. But let's see.
Yeah, it needs to be followed by action. I think that we've seen, especially now again on the topic of freedom, we've seen a lot of statements from a lot of countries condemning China for its action towards Hong Kong. The statements are extremely useless if they're not followed by concrete actions. So 100% agree with Andrea. We welcome the statements, but we're not going to do anything with the statements. We actually need to see governments following the statements with concrete actions on topic like China, on topic like climate change, on topic like migration. I think that's the biggest thing. Moving on to another thing. Now this is a test for Andrea. Let's see if he remembers. What were you doing on October 17th of a year ago?
So on October 17th of a year ago, I was sitting in front of my laptop with a very, very small website, polishing the last details of the very, very small website. I was going to launch in a few hours with Cologne. There is nothing inside. And October 17th was actually the date of the pre-launch of Now. So for maybe just a few of you, because since then we moved from 2 people to many thousand, but for a few of you that were already following us, that was the day when we opened the pre-launch webpage and we started the crowdfunding that allowed Now to become Now. Actually, we collected, I think, 40,000 euros. So it was a very good crowdfunding. And so 1 year now, almost 1 year ago, we were there.
Yes, and the reason I asked Andrea about this, not only to test his memory, but also because it's the anniversary of the pre-launch of Now this year, we're going to launch something a bit different, but I think it's a very big step in the direction of what the future holds for Now. I think that the day is very important. So we don't have a long left. We have 3 weeks left. But we want you to know that we will be launching something very important to understand what the future will be for Now. What topics are you interested in? What battles should we focus on? What are the solutions that you propose? So I think that I guess Andrea is a bit less nervous for this 17th of October, but I think it's something really exciting to shape what the next year is going to hold for us and for all the people that are joining us and taking on battles together with us.
I'm a bit nervous because not like last year, but in a sense, it's the moment where we move from what we call the test year, the first year where we're trying stuff and understanding how can we actually build a global movement to actually getting serious. And like, we really want 2021 to be our year. And I mean, 2020 has been difficult for many of us. It's been very good for now, but for many of us it was difficult. We want to ensure that in 2021 now becomes a really global venture. And it's truly important that all of you that are following us today from Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, actually become involved, because we want your brains, we want your hopes and dreams. We want to see what you dream about for a global society, for the society of tomorrow. So we won't tell you exactly yet what we're going to do on October 17th, but it really will be focused on having you participating heavily in the future of this movement.
Yeah.
So get ready.
Yeah, so exciting.
Oh my, we want a party. By the way, what I love of this slide is that we have people from Hong Kong, people from Spain, people from Venezuela following us. You see, even if we are still small and we have a lot to do, we are creating something global, and that's the most exciting thing we can do.
Yes, yeah, it's I mean, we know Omar very well, so we're super happy to always see him, but to see people from Hong Kong that are facing very difficult times, to people from Venezuela and many other countries, I think it shows like how global we can be and how even more global we can make the year ahead. So I think I wasn't nervous on the 17th of October last year, but I'm excited now to see what we're gonna have in the future.
Yes. So I think that is basically it from our live. One final thing is, remember at the end of the month on the 3rd, on October 1st, I think, yes, October 2nd, Colombo and I will be in Athens for a very important conference on democracy, hosted by the New York Times. We are going to actually discuss about how digital grassroots mobilization can impact global challenges, so really related to now. It's a very cool thing, especially for a young movement like ours. So I'm sure we're going to stream it somehow. So if you can, please follow us online.
Yeah, Andrea is trying to be humble, but it's not something small. So be sure to follow them. I will be rooting for them from London, but it's going to be super interesting and again super exciting. So please follow and send good vibes for them.
Having said that, we are always at your disposal. So like, if you wanna email us, comment on under these videos, we're gonna review the comments, and that's it, I think.
Yes, see you next week.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week.